People need to realize this is a war, and they need to let us fight our war, and we'll win this war.
When I woke up in Bethesda, all I remember is that they had just taken the bone out and stuck it in my gut here so it would stay clean.
I was asking them over and over again when I got hit, is my eye okay? Is my eye okay? Yeah, it's okay. You look good, man. You look good. You know, you're still pretty. I'm like, man, you know, I'm laying there and he's joking with me. I'm dying. He's joking with me.
Fall down! Hey, 2 Marines up the top! Roger, looks pretty fresh to me over. How many seconds?
The Marine Corps story. It's told a little differently by every Marine. Each story is an epic, each a journey into a world that only a Marine can understand. A world of pride and tradition built on more than 2 centuries of legacy. Thousands of warriors have given their blood to keep that legacy alive, and those who live to tell about it do. Our wounded Marines tell some of the most compelling stories. These are just a few of them.
We were slightly just south, about 30, 40 miles from Baghdad down south. 2nd Battalion, 2nd Marines was there when we got there to the north piece, and they gave us a bigger piece south. And primarily what we did was secure that area, and a lot of national things that just had to be taken care of. The main highway that was going north to south of Baghdad had been destroyed. They had blown up 7, I believe the number was 7 different bridges. So we had to secure those bridges and get that thing moving and try to, support their Iraqis so they could rebuild those bridges. That was a big task for us, get the highway open. Those kind of missions that we did. We had 2 battalions had MSSG with us, and of course we had a chunk of the Ace that was co-located with us down south of Baghdad. Let me say that when we moved in there initially, it was like a campground. I mean, it was a mess. Not much security there. There's very few Army guys down there. Really small little camp. By the time we left, it was a little small town. I was doing not much of anything. I've been out on many patrols, but the operations officer spent most of the time in the command operations center. That's what I was doing, and we had done a big mission with the Poles, and the Army had come, and so times were odd, of course. And so one day things had slowed down. I think we just finished that mission, if I remember correctly. And I'd just gone to lunch on the way back from lunch in the chow, where we wore flag and helmet all the time. Mortars are fairly common in every position, division, if everybody gets mortared. But our camp is a lot smaller. We would take many casualties every time we took mortars, and we took them, I guess, maybe once a week. Sometimes we wouldn't take them at all for weeks at an end, and then we'd take 2, 3 times a week, so it's hard to classify. But we always wore flag and helmet, and I wore my flag and helmet in, ate lunch, wore my flag and helmet back. Went into my brand new tent I just moved into. It's not new, I'm just new to move in there. I took my flag and helmet off and was taking to say a nap is really unfair. I was wearing my boots and camis and everything, just no flak jacket. And I crashed myself for 20 minutes. I remember resting for 20 minutes before going back to COC to recock my energy. And that's when something happened.
We got a call in our battalion, and it said 5 snipers were ambushed. They were killed. We pushed north a little bit, and we did some vehicle checkpoints. We were doing them for probably a good half hour, and we've seen 3 more vehicles. We already had like 4 vehicles in the box. We pulled off a little bit. The first vehicle that went by was a white Bronco, and I looked at it. It looked a little suspicious, It looked like it had a bunch of stuff in the back, had a blanket thrown over it. It was a real clean Bronco. And we mentioned something about it. Sergeant Graham, you know, he was kind of like, well, you know, keep an eye on it. We'll let the guys up there know about it. So we pulled back up and we blocked, and I seen an Iraqi walking up to my vehicle, and he was walking pretty fast. So I got out of my vehicle, and I brought my M16 with me. I clicked it on semi, and you know, I seen this guy walking before on the east side of the river. So I figured, you know, I'd question him because he had to have seen something. We get hit by IEDs all the time over there. And I figured I'd question him a little bit, see what he had to say. Well, I asked him, I said, do you speak English? And he's still walking up on me. I said, do you speak English? And then I told him to stop. And he got right up on me, and all of a sudden I heard an explosion. That's when I got thrown forward a little bit. And I didn't even see what happened to the Iraqi. My head just kind of went down like this, and next thing I know, I'm on the ground. And I'm just burning all over the place, you know. It was a shrapnel that just, my whole body was on fire. And I'm looking around, I can't really hear nothing. I start yelling for Sergeant Graham, I start yelling for Lance Corporal Cordova and Doc, and make sure they're all right. I looked up at Cordova and I seen him up on the turret, and he was kind of thrown up over it. The 240 was thrown and it was blown into pieces. Our hood, that was completely off, and pieces of the engine were all over the place. And the back, like the trunk, that was all blown open. All our packs were blown off. Doors were blown open. I looked down and I got blood all over my camis, and I got rips and tears all over my camis. And I didn't know it at the time, but I was bleeding from my wrist. It cut my pulmonary artery, and I was bleeding out from there, and I was dying.
April 7, 2004, we were ambushed. I was in the lead vehicle in the convoy, and during the course of the ambush, I was struck by a rocket-propelled grenade that actually hit my saw and took both my hands off, blew my leg open, and fractured my femur, and left me hurting. The first thing that went through my mind was, you know, I'm hit, and I'm trying to figure out where I'm hit and how bad. And you know, then when I, you know, was able to take a look at my wounds, you know, then I realized the severity of my wounds. So what came to my mind is, okay, what do I need to do to prevent myself from dying, and so that we can get out of here alive? You know, I knew that I couldn't return fire anymore. So something that went through my mind was, okay, no, if I can't return fire, what can I do? You know, I still have Marines that can return fire, and I can, you know, I have Marines that can help me with my first aid. When we did manage to get the Humvee back to where we had support, the corpsman ran up pretty much immediately as soon as we drove up on his vehicle. And they got me out of the vehicle, laid me on the deck, using the Humvee as cover from enemy fire, and he pretty much took over from where my teammates were taking care of me, and got an IV in me, got my tourniquet secured, started bandaging me up, and from there I was in the hands of the corpsman.
Luckily, I wasn't scared of nothing, but it's because my brain was whacked. I had walked around inside the tent. I had found the door. I fell down the steps that led into the door. It was secure around the outside. It was secure right down the front walk-in area. Okay, and then it was secured to take a left, but it's not secured at the top in any of those places. So clearly the round had landed somewhere, and my brain is thinking something happened. So apparently I walked out into the security area and fell straight down. And the young Marine saw me and knew who I was, and so two guys whose names I have in mind. I cannot remember the names of anybody because of the injury I've had.
This is the actual RPG that hit me, the rod. So these are the fins. The back here is where the stabilizing fins pop out. The warhead would have been up here in the front. So this was found in the back of my Humvee. So what happened is when I was firing and the RPG hit my weapon, it came from about this angle, somehow by my head and into the back of the Humvee.
They had run out to get me, and they'd done so. They picked me up and were dragging me. I think my feet were dragging. I don't remember any of this part, but I understand my feet were dragging. They got me under the shoulders and pulled me through, and we'd all fallen. And just when we hit the deck, I have heard that another mortar round landed just near us and blew up. And the good story is, it's darn bad luck I took getting the mortar round. Turns out the mortar round landed outside the door along the little path you take, maybe, it's maybe 5 feet, so you can walk out in security. The round had landed right in the middle. So all the mortar rounds had gone, straight down the walk area, because they're all been kept in. That's bad luck. Good luck is it didn't kill us after those 2 devil dogs came to get me. So they picked me up and they got me over to security, safe area, and then from there started the process to get me out of town. I don't remember much of it.
I looked over at Doc, and he was laying face down, and he had an arm laying on his back. I didn't know whose arm it was, but I turned around, I started crawling towards him, and that's when I started looking on the ground. I seen a jaw, and I grabbed my jaw to make sure it wasn't mine, and luckily it wasn't. Obviously it wasn't, and I seen like just ribs and pieces of body everywhere. It was just, it was just a terrible sight. Called over to Doc, and I grabbed him by his arm, and I kind of turned him over, and I got him to start breathing again once he turned over. And that's when a couple other Marines, Captain Honey and Lance Corporal O'Connor, and a couple other guys, they ran over. Captain Honey grabbed my wrist, and he started wrenching down on it. And he ended up taking a piece of cloth and a bungee cord from the back of the truck and tied my wrist up with it because there's nothing else. And we're laying there bleeding out, and I'm yelling to everybody. I'm asking where Sergeant Graham's at, and they keep telling me he's right behind me, so I start yelling his name, and he's not answering me. And I can't turn around because I'm hurt too much. I can't really move. They radioed in to Al-Assad to get a Kazbek, and I guess from what I'm told, the reason why it took so long, it was over a half hour that we were laying there, is because they said the area wasn't secure enough.
But when I woke up in Bethesda, all I remember is they'd just taken the bone out and stuck it in my gut here so it would stay clean. Literally took out the bone here and put it here. Well, it was a great decision, and apparently a doctor has to make the decision on the spot. And this is in Baghdad. This is not in Germany. I mean, this is like instantly the day I show up, they got to cut this bone out. And I guess the concept is that your brain's going to expand and collapse because of the wounded part. So if you keep your bone in, your brain has trouble expanding. So they cut its chunk out so it would expand and collapse. So when I passed, phased awake or woke up or whatever happened, I remember that my left side of my head, of course, was gassed way in because there was no bones.